Welcome to Catch Outdoors. I'm your host, Captain Rob Modies. Contact, email, catchoutdoors@gmail.com, website, catchoutdoors.com, Facebook page, Catch Ya Outdoors. I have a couple of books available on Amazon Kindle. Thanks much to everyone that's purchased both. Bridge to Paradise and What I Know About Fishing Southwest Florida. Now working on number 3. No title just yet, but it is going to be about fishing. Today's episode, number 32, Florida Keys fishing, shelling. Oh, and I added something on that wasn't in the initial title, some exciting Airshow news. We're going to talk fish and we're going to talk a little bit about some I had a special request from someone that said they read a story of mine a while back about shelling and enjoyed it and wanted to know a little bit more detail, in which they sent me some, can you tell me about this, this, and this? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? That's a good idea, actually. And then the air show yesterday, which was Sunday. Well, actually, it went all weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We had the Fort Lauderdale Air Show here, which was very exciting. The Air Force Thunderbirds were here, as well as many, many other jet aircraft, prop aircraft, stunt planes, U.S. Coast Guard helicopters, and just all kind, skydivers. It was great. It's 10th annual show. And this year it was the whole, COVID caused pieces of it the year before. They actually ran one in, I believe it was November, a year and a half ago. But anyway, so it was great to be back on the beach. Great to really see the whole show again. And Jonelle and I live close enough to the beach. We're only a mile or two away. The practice runs, which started midweek, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, were right over the house. So we got almost a whole week of air show. So let's start with fishing. This came about, this whole fishing story, this takes place in Islamorada, Florida, down in the Florida Keys. It all took place thanks to a group of folks. I sat in on a meeting that was actually a meeting with my wife and these guys, and it was part of Waypoint Television, who, they're on Discovery and Valley Sportsman's Channel. I'm sure many of you listening have heard of Saltwater Experience. That's one of their big shows, and they have since added Into the Blue, and then there's a new one too, coming to Freshwater, from what I understand. But anyway, I was in there talking, and one thing led to another. Oh, you've got a podcast? Oh, we do fishing podcasts. Would you like to be a part of this? And I'm like, hell yeah. Of course I would. Because I'm familiar with Waypoint, and I'm familiar with the Saltwater Experience. I mean, that's one of the greatest of the saltwater fishing shows on television. It has been for quite some time. And I'm also a big Tom Rowland fan. Met Tom Rowland through Bass Pro years ago when I was working over there. And I'd wind up doing the show because of Real Talk Radio. And Tom Rowland would be there because of his TV show. So we got quite a bit of chance to talk to each other. So anyway, I'm pretty excited. I met their advertising director. His name is Josh Dickerson. And Josh was super. And in conversation, Josh just basically said, would you and Jonelle like to go fishing here in the Keys? We're like, yeah, heck yeah. So they had some trips already planned. And after we got home, I got a note that said, hey, we got a Thursday open, and would you like to come down? This was the past Thursday. And I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, I'd like to come down. So drove down to Islamorada on Wednesday. Boy, it's great living on this coast, man. I can get to Islamorada now in a little under 2 hours. Actually, I can get to Key Largo in about 90 minutes, so it's wonderful. Yay, Keys. It's in my blood. It really is. Got down there, spent the night Wednesday, got up bright and early, and went down to the marina. And oddly enough, the marina that I went to it's all been redone now. Anglers, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's right down the road from the Lorelei, on the bay side. And it used to be called the Matacumbe Marina. And Janelle and I kept our boat there 25 years ago. I couldn't believe when I rolled in there. It looks sort of the same, but not. Still areas to park boats. Great big, huge tiki structure, not a hut, tiki structure in the middle of the place. They've added a swimming pool. They've got a place to park the boats, and of course the ramp is still there. But anyway, it was like, wow, I can't believe I'm full circle in this place. So it was Josh and I, and we met our guide, Captain Casey Spalding. And Casey, fourth generation, young. I didn't ask, but I'm going to guess late 20s. And boy, does that boy know the water. I'll tell you that right now. Not only does he know the water, he's got eyes. He's got those eyes when you're up on the pulling platform and you can see things that your anglers can't see. And I'm pretty good at spotting stuff because of all my time on the water. Let me tell you what, that boy just shines when it comes to finding fish. And that was important that day. Dead calm. I mean, you have never, well, I've seen it. You all may never seen it like this. It was just glass. And it was glass almost all day. I don't think we got more than a breath of air. Ran us, I don't know. Well, I know between Islamorada and Flamingo, it's about 30 miles. So we had to put on 60 miles, 50, 60 miles. Went out of the crystal clear water up into the green water, I call it. That's the over by the Gulf where the water changes colors in Florida Bay, and started hunting. And the first stop was for snook, and the first stop was highly successful. The water was a funny green color, floating grass. Not the easiest stuff in the world to fish. But like I said, Casey had great eyes, so he'd spot a snook. And what we were doing basically is just the typical Florida Bay fishing. You got these great big, huge open flats with little bitty cuts in them where the water travels through as the tide moves. And when I say a cut, we're talking about 9 or 10 inches of water, drops down to a whopping 14, 16 inches of water, maybe. That's the cut. And the fish travel in those cuts, especially when the tide's moving. Almost always will face it. That's where the food comes from. So we had some pretty good shots, and then I'd say about an hour into it, he there was excitement in his voice because he saw a big one laying up on the edge. Got me up on the bow. I made about 4 errant casts without hitting the thing, a little wide. But what was great about I couldn't see the fish. I really could not see it, but Casey could from his vantage point because he's, on that pulling platform, he's 4 or 5 feet taller than I am. A good 4 or 5, maybe more like 6 feet, maybe. But anyway, he was instructing. I made cast wide. If I remember right, it was wide right. He's like, bring it left, 5 feet. I brought it left 4 feet. And he says, not close enough. And the reason it wasn't close enough, in most cases, a fish will just jump on it when it's that close. Not this time. Because the water was so cloudy, repeated rains, low tide, I could go on and on, but I dropped that thing on the 3rd or 4th cast, I don't remember which, right in front of this snook, and this snook just wolfed it down. It was a beast. Head came out of the water, and I commented, I think the head weighs 10 pounds, and ran for a bit. Took about 4 or 5 minutes to get him turned and get him landed. We're using light spin, but a really good control rod. If you know what you're doing, you're not going to wind up wearing the fish out. You're not going to fight it for 15 or 20 minutes. I think I got it. I'm going to guess 4 to 5 minutes, maybe a little over. You pull hard on them is what you do. He had Loomis equipment. The rod was a Loomis rod. White 8-pound braid, which I thought was great. I love 8-pound braid because you can cast it a mile. And then he ties a tip on. I think he said he ties 20 braid onto the end of the 8 because he's stepping up to a 40-pound leader. Now he told me he hates to use below 30 with snook, and all of us do. I mean, snook have got ridiculous gills that will cut you off in a heartbeat. But in this case, we were able to use the 40 because of the water being so cloudy. Using soft plastics, dark colored soft plastics, and little split tails, and an offset hook, an offset weighted owner hook, the hooks that have the little weights on the shanks. I'm going to say it was a 1/32 or 1/16, just from holding it in my hand. It was, just enough to get it down under that grass, but you don't want it to go like sticking to the bottom, so you need just enough weight to get it down there. So anyway, the snook comes in, winds up he's 38 inches. I'm going to guesstimate over 30 pounds. My doctors won't let me lift more than that from back surgeries, and I know I was right there, which put a grin on Casey's face. He got up there for some pictures. You want to see photos? The Facebook page, my personal Facebook page has got them, and they're also on Instagram under Capped Rob Modi's. And man, oh man! And then shortly after that, we moved down the same little canal. Josh had a shot and missed. Put me back on the bow. Got up there and got a 35-inch snook. Pretty much exactly the same routine. The only difference this one was it ran across the flat and a big old shark. I think it was a bull. I don't remember whether he said it was a bull or a lemon. He could see better than I could, but a shark showed up. So I popped the bail open, let the snook run. We all pounded on the deck. Shark turned around and took off in the opposite direction, thank goodness. Cranked the line back down, and my fish was still there and brought him in. He was 35, over 20 pounds. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fish. These are gorgeous fish in really great shape, nice and, that shiny color they are when they're close to the Gulf. A little bit later, we moved over to a whole different flat, and I got a slob redfish. I'm sorry, I didn't measure it. Uh, it was, I would say, over slot, but it was one of those fish where you're like, if it were a slot fish, it'd be a winner because it was so nice and round, like a 9 pound, 9 to 10 pound, which is a top tournament redfish. Then we went looking. We were trying to get the Grand Slam, so we went tarpon hunting, found tarpon but no takers. Went permit hunting, found one, two, three schools, four schools of permit running across, no takers. In this case, we had switched to a live crab. They just didn't want any part of us. And by that time, it was time to start to head back home. Stopped on a flat down at the bottom near Islamorada and did a quick little search for bonefish, but we could all sense the day was kind of just winding down. I cannot wait to get back. I really can't. Jonelle and I have a trip scheduled with Casey in middle May, so hopefully there'll be more stories to tell at that point, and hopefully Jonelle will get herself on a whopper snook. Things I learned, every time you go out, you learn something new. I learned a little bit about rigging for bonefish that I don't do. That was interesting. I'm not going to relay it here because it was one of Casey's secret methods. So if you ever get a chance to fish with Casey, you need to ask him about that. um, it was so good to be back in this what I call my old stomping grounds because reality is, when we first got a boat, we got a boat over in Fort Lauderdale. We fished the Florida Keys. We kept it at the Matacumbe Bay Marina. We went down almost every other weekend. And it was way before GPSs. So Janelle and I would go out and go up into the bay and work as far as we felt comfortable and go home. And we did that repeatedly over weeks, months, and eventually got all the way up to Flamingo, which felt like a real victory. Because let me tell you what, man, there ain't much. You're out of sight of land once you get 6-7 miles up into the bay. You can't see much behind you. So there's also a zillion little canals that you need to stay in. You do not want to tear up the grass flats in Florida Bay. That is a big time no-no. Matter of fact, it's a finable no-no. So the Park Service has got markers, these little channels with pointed markers to help you find your way, and you start to learn the names of each of the channels and where to go and how to get from point A to point B. There is no direct line. Let's just put it. You don't just drive into Florida Bay. So it was thrilling to be back. It was thrilling to see and to ask Casey, "Is that?" And he'd go, "No, that's over there." Like I knew the names of them, but I didn't know exactly. Other than the Twin Key Bank, I didn't have trouble with that, and Tin Can Channel up at the very top. But the other channels, I was mystified. Like, where's Rabbit Key? Well, it's right over there. Where's Sand Key? Oh, it's over there. But it was really, really great to be back, and it was great to get some really, really superior fish on the line. Casey, if you listen to this, thank you so much. You've obviously learned a lot, and we'll be fishing with you again and again and again, I hope. Quick note on the podcast part. So I will be as everything is in line. Contracts being worked on. Don't worry, I'll let you know when things are not going to switch around that much for the listeners. You're all still, Apple Podcasts, they distribute on a whole bunch of podcasts. So it's not like you're not, I'll still be on Spotify and that. The difference is I'll be part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective and part of the Waypoint podcast, which is Mostly, no, it's all outdoors. So my podcast won't change that much. I'll be doing it'll be a little stronger on fishing, obviously, which that's okay. I like talking fishing. But it will also cover a lot of the other outdoor things that I think people enjoy in Florida. And I'm pretty excited about that. Let's talk a little bit about shelling. Florida is, it's, let's put it this way. The west coast of Florida. Now, there's a little. I'm talking about the difference here, but the west coast of Florida is what I'm specifically speaking of. The shelling on the lower west coast of Florida is, by all, every report that you read or every article that I've read, it's number two in the world. The only other spot that people really go to for shells is the Philippines, and that's just what I've gleaned from my readings. But Sanibel Island on the west coast of Florida, the southwest coast of Florida, is like the mecca, if you will. Now, I'll argue that a little bit because I enjoy shelling on Sanibel. I've seen them pile up on Sanibel, and I know it's got that reputation. But you can go all the way down to Marco Island and down even into the small islands on the upper end of the Everglades National Park, and you will find some beautiful shells down there. And obviously Captiva, which is just north of that, all the way up to Clearwater, where I used to live, all the way up near Tampa Bay. But Sanibel has a very unique um, position, and that is what really helps capture these things. Sanibel, most people look at Sanibel as a north-south island off the coast of Florida. So it's right off the coast of Fort Myers Beach. And then in the north end of Sanibel is the island of Captiva. So you have about 11 miles, I'm going to guesstimate on this, of Sanibel, and then you got a few miles of Captiva stuck on top of that. Above that, you have North Cap, and then you have Cayo Costa, the Cayo Costa State Park, which, by the way, is also an outrageously great shelling area. Um, so the reason Sanibel's so good is Sanibel's not truly a northeast island until you get around the boot. It's basically shaped like a boot, and the lower part of Sanibel is literally more east-west than it is north-south, and then the island curves around and goes north obviously at the boot heel. That, because of its shape, where it is, and the capture of water coming in, that's what I believe makes it a great shelling location. It captures shells like crazy. Also, you have to keep in mind the Gulf versus the Atlantic is radically different. Atlantic fishing, fishing. See, there I go. Atlantic shelling. It's very deep water coming across a reef onto a beach. I'm telling you right now, most of the better shells are found when you're out there diving. Once it gets caught in the reef, that's pretty much the end of it. Plus, it's fairly rough. I mean, let's face it, there's a rolling sea almost all the time on the Atlantic, so shells get broken. Um, West Coast? Nope, not at all. As a matter of fact, there is a slow shelf running from very shallow at the beach to the deeper depths. You're going to have to go out 30, 40 miles out into the Gulf of Mexico to find water that's 60, 70, 80 feet deep. I mean, you're going to have to really work to get deep. So you have this very gradual shelf with almost nothing in the way to bring those shells up on the beach. Now, the questions I was asked. Okay, so when do you shell? That was one of the big ones. Simple. Early in the morning at best. Get there before everybody else. Act like you're a fisherman and beat them there. The Sanibel Stoop, and that's what it's called. These people that are looking down, wading in the water, hunting for shells, they call that the Sanibel Stoop. In the morning, these people wear headlamps. They literally wear fishermen use them too for tying knots in the morning, or even getting your boat ready on the trailer or your kayak ready on the trailer. You put these little helmet lights on, or these hat lights on, so you can see what you're doing. Same deal. They wade out in the water, knee deep, and they look for the shells that haven't quite made it to the beach yet. Best shelling time is early and low tide. If you can get there right as the tide is finishing up going out and before it switches and comes back, it makes hunting for the shells easier. Obviously, wind out of the east because you're on the west coast. So if you've got a breeze, you want it out of the east so it's not riffling on the water, and you can see better that way. But the big clue is the flashlight early in the morning. Believe you me, I've seen them. I would set up out there to fly fish along Sanibel's beach for snook, and I'd find these shellers, and they'd literally beat you there. The good news about them is they don't disturb the fish that much. Once they've walked through, if there's any snook in the area, they'll kind of come back in. But it's part of the deal. Um, Also, now daylight. If you start as the sun comes up and you start hunting for shells in the daylight, it's best if you have a really good pair of polarized sunglasses. And this lady asked me a question about that, like how much do you spend? A lot. I'm sorry. I mean, they make there's a whole bunch of fishing glasses available on the counters of fishing stores, and they'll range anywhere from $9.99 to I don't know, 19.99, and they, polarized fishing glasses. Yeah, they are. They work, but they're nowhere near as good at cutting the glare as a top-end pair of glasses. And there's, I mean, Costa's a well-known name. I could mention many others, but you get the gist. Go to a fishing store. I mean, Smith Optics is one that I really like. Smith Optics to me is kind of new. I mean, I've always been a Costa fan and worn Costas, but the Smiths are really great. And again, like I said, there's others, but I prefer when I'm shelling a amber lens. All right, so not the blue for like deep sea fishing, not the green, but an amber lens. An amber lens are as it sounds, they're kind of a brownish orange color, and they really cut the glare, and that's what you're after. I mean, the biggest problem you have fishing, there I go again, shelling in daylight. Well, it's for fishing too, so that's why my brain's going that way. I also wear amber glasses whenever I'm fishing on the West Coast in the back bays, because it cuts that glare and it lets you see fish. And in the case of shelling, the shells just pop. One of the things that I do for shelling is I'll look for oddball colors. I really like to try to find most of the shells are like glossy. It's hard to explain. They're beige or white or whatever. The better shells typically have some sort of color or spots, like the Genonia, which is a highly sought after, very rare shell on the West Coast. The Genonia is basically creamy white with brown spots. If you're wearing amber glasses, those brown spots pop out more. So it enables you to see something that's normally very hard to find. So anyway, a really good pair of sunglasses. So calm, east wind, visibility is very important, whether it's in the evening or not, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and then it was like, besides the wind to shell, she was like, "What's the best? What's the best thing?" Right after storms, there's no question about it. When I worked over on the West Coast as a guide, I did shelling trips too. It helped fill the void in the summer when people weren't fishing quite as much. And by the way, they were great. And I'd run people up to North Cap, usually North Cap Tiva, up in that area. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, it's accessible only by boat, so you have far less shellers than you have down on Captiva and Sanibel, where you can drive your car to it. It just has an abundance of shells, and it's a beautiful island. You pull up, let people out on the island, let them hunt for shells for a while, pick them back up, and then run them back home. I love doing North Cap, but I had clients that would call me when the storm was forecast. They would say, "Oh, there's something tropical coming." Yeah, you're right. And you got any idea when it be over? No, I really don't. But let's just say they're saying Thursday or Friday it'll be past. So there you go. They would book a trip. They'd book a trip Friday, Saturday, early, very early, like I said. And that what they were doing was really smart. I mean, once a tropical blow comes through, what it's doing is it's just basically pushing all kinds of shells out of the water right up onto the beach. You should have seen it. After a tropical blow or a hurricane, shells would be over knee high, thigh high, sometimes waist high, piled onto the beaches. It's an amazing sight. And your better shellers, what they do is literally plop themselves down on top of the pile and dig. They start basically just scooping into the shells, because what's on top is not as important, but especially once it gets picked over. But the good stuff is down below. Quick story. after Hurricane Charlie, which damn near put me out of business for 2 months, I guess. Charlie really screwed up Pine Island Sound, something terrible when it came through. Cat 4. So, of course, it did. It wrecked houses up in Charlotte Harbor. It was just a mess. I went out. We got hired at the docks by some of the county people to run ice up there, generators, things like that. Um, North Captiva, the island I was just talking about, got cut in half. The hurricane literally opened a canal down the middle of the thing, which has since grown over and filled back in. But for a while, we had like a new pass, as I refer to it. There's a new pass. If you don't get that, there's a new pass down on Fort Myers Beach area, down on Lovers Key. So I called it New Pass. But anyway, I loaded Janelle up in the boat. We took off, went up there, and I said, "Man, you have to come see this. You have to see this giant cut through this island. It's insane." There were trees out in the whole trees. It uprooted entire Australian pines and put them in Pine Island Sound on the east side of the island, where it just literally blew them out of the ground. So we carefully motored up in there, put the boat up on the bow on the beach, and got out and started walking. And we found the most fabulous shells you have ever seen. It was amazing. We still have the jar. The jar's here at the house. We call it the Hurricane Charlie jar. Um, it I think we found three Janonias. We had at least one good one and two broken ones. There was all kinds of other beautiful shells, just tons of really great stuff that's really hard to find. All in about, I don't know. I think we might be spent 90 minutes up there, an hour and a half, 2 hours until we, had our fill. That also wound up being a fabulous fishing place, by the way. It was featured in a lot of fishing shows. The root balls off of these trees created washouts. So, in other words, you have to picture an entire tree that's 40, 50, 60 feet in height, blown out into the bay. And the bays are shallow now. Don't get me. This is not deep. So if you're picturing something like a lake, it's not. The water is averages 3 or 4 feet deep. Blew the trees out there, and then with the tides and time, the water started getting washed out around the root balls. And guess where all the fish were? Redfish, snook, snapper, sea trout. Oh my goodness! Even some in the cooler months, toward wintertime, there were a whole bunch of grouper moved in there. So it was funny because the fishing shows were taping shows, and people. I thought people at home were going to see this and they're going to come roaring down here, and it all filled back in. Plain and simple. Just like everything else does in water, give it time, and Mother Nature will sort of take care of stuff. And it closed the pass up. It filled the holes in. The trees rotted away, and that was the end of that. So shelling is fabulous after storms. Just keep that in mind. If you're really looking for the spot and you really want to get, you're a serious collector and you really want to hit it. If you live in Southwest Florida or if you vacation Southwest Florida and you happen to hit around a pretty good, and I'm not talking like it's got to, blow your socks off, just a really good storm, a 2 or 3 day wipe out where you can't do anything but go shopping, that kind of storm. You can't go to the beach. You can't, yeah, right. 35, 40 mile an hour winds, right at tropical winds, gale force. That's going to produce some amazing shelling, and it's going to produce it for days. You're going to get the people that pick over it pretty quick, but because of the shell piles, you'll be able to find lots of them. So there's your shelling tips. I hope you're happy. Thanks for the note. I appreciate you sending it to me. All right, last but not least, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the Fort Lauderdale Air Show. Golly Moses, that was exciting. The featured act, if you will, was the Air Force Thunderbirds. Um, they they put on a heck of a show. We were comparing it to the Blue Angels, and we love both. We think that the Thunderbirds did a few more better sneak ups. And I don't, we call them sneak attacks. And those of you that have been to air shows, especially fighter jet type shows, they're famous for this. They'll get your eyes out. In our case, it's over the water. So, by the way, it's beautiful. You go to the beach to go to an air show. How can you beat that? Um, Out over the water, they'll do loops, they'll do clover leaves, they'll do all kinds of fleur de lis. They'll do all kinds of things with the trails, the smoke trails coming out of the back of the jet, and Then there'll be a sneaky jet that's off all by itself somewhere, the fighter jet, and he'll come screaming over the beach from an angle that you didn't expect. And we got several of those. Hair on your arm stands up, everybody ducks and then starts laughing. I think I have a video one I'm going to have to post. But the air show had quite a bit of stuff going on. We had F-16 Vipers, we had A-10 Warthogs, the F-35C. Oh my gosh, that's the newest of the fighter jets, the Navy fighter jet. You should see that thing. You should hear that thing. It's unreal. We had a V-22 Osprey. The Osprey, this is that. Do you call it a helicopter or do you call it an airplane? If you've never seen when it's got these huge props that face upward, so it can be a helicopter, it can hover. They can rotate the props forward and it can fly at 200 miles an hour, just like a aircraft. Amazing. It was made. I had never seen one transition the props in flight. I couldn't picture. Do they slow down? Do they go fast? No, they actually can literally rotate the entire engine and props forward or straight up, depending on what they need. It must take a ton of coordination to get that handled. The USCG, my alma mater, it was nice to see them out there. They did a rescue sequence with a helicopter right in front of the beach. They dropped the dummy out. They got the basket. The rescue diver went into the into the water. Then they put the basket down, loaded up. They did the whole scenario. It was really cool. Congratulations, Coast Guard. It was nice to see you guys out there. F-15 Strike Eagles, F-18 Super Hornets. The Red Bull Air Force was there. That was pretty amazing. That was Kirby Chambliss. He's the guy that flies stunt. And Michael Goulian was there as well. He also is a stunt pilot. T-38 Talon. Let's see. Oh, the Red Bull helicopter. Okay, it's a helicopter that can do loops and 4-point turns. It was crazy. It scares you to watch this thing because helicopters aren't supposed to do what this helicopter does. And then, of course, the Thunderbirds. All just a ton of fun. You should have seen the beach. It looked like spring break on steroids. It was so good to see just a really big crowd out enjoying themselves and watching the airplanes. It was great to meet people out there and talk to people, just a bunch of enthusiasts. I mean, it's just a beach full of people that were just enthused about having the air show. I'm looking forward already to next year. I can't wait to get back out there and see it again. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed the podcast, please tell a friend and share it on social media or leave a review. Catch You Outdoors is hosted by Hank, available via Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Facebook page, Catch You Outdoors. Our website's catchyoutdoors.com. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.